My boyfriend said love should be proven with money. He ended up losing everything money couldn't buy. My name is Claire Bennett, and I was 29 when I learned that some people don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with what you're willing to prove. I met Ethan Carter on a dating app 6 weeks before everything fell apart. From the beginning, he seemed refreshingly different from every disappointing date I'd had over the past year. He was charming without showing off, thoughtful without trying too hard, and somehow remembered every little detail I casually mentioned. By our third date, he already knew my coffee order. When I joked that I couldn't stand people who talked through movies, he laughed and said we'd just passed our first compatibility test. We clicked effortlessly. We loved the same true crime documentaries, old rock songs, and greasy late-night diners. Our first date stretched into 4 hours. Our second ended only because the restaurant was closing, and by the third week, we'd slipped into comfortable routines. He texted me every morning, I called him on my drive home, and every Sunday we searched for another breakfast place while debating who served the best pancakes. Nothing felt forced, which was probably why I let my guard down so quickly. Ethan didn't walk into my life carrying obvious red flags. He showed up with coffee, thoughtful conversations, and the kind of attention that made me believe I'd finally met someone worth taking a chance on. After so many half-hearted dates, hope felt less like a risk and more like something I'd finally earned. We officially became a couple after 4 weeks. 31 days later, we met for dinner at a small Italian restaurant near my apartment. It wasn't an anniversary or a special occasion, just an ordinary Thursday night. But from the moment we sat down, something felt off. Ethan barely touched his food, checked his phone every few minutes, and kept looking at me as though he were rehearsing something in his head. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked. He turned his phone face down and forced a smile. "Yeah, I've just been thinking." "About work?" He shook his head. "About us." Something in his voice made me set my fork down. Around us, the restaurant buzzed with conversations and clinking glasses, but our table suddenly felt isolated from everyone else. "I think it's time we talked seriously about our future," he said. I smiled, expecting a conversation about meeting each other's families, planning a trip together, or spending more time at one another's apartments. It felt like the kind of conversation couples naturally have once a relationship starts becoming important. "Okay." He leaned back and watched me for a moment before unlocking his phone. Without saying a word, he slid it across the table. A diamond ring filled the screen. It was a 2-carat oval-cut ring from a luxury jeweler, elegant enough to catch anyone's eye. Mine, however, went straight to the number underneath. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "The ring I want." I let out a short laugh, convinced he was setting up some elaborate joke, but his expression never changed. "I'm serious, Claire. I want you to buy it before the end of the month." The noise of the restaurant seemed to disappear. "You want me to buy you an engagement ring?" "I want you to prove you're serious about us. We've been together for 1 month. 31 days, he corrected. I couldn't decide whether the precision was supposed to sound romantic or calculated. Judging by the look on his face, it was the latter. "So you honestly think I should spend over $18,000 on you after 6 weeks together?" "I don't think commitment should be this difficult." "It isn't. Spending that kind of money on someone I barely know is." His expression tightened. "So I'm not worth it." "That's not what I said, and you know it." "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying we still don't know each other. We know our coffee orders, our favorite music, and where we like to eat breakfast on Sundays. I still don't know how you handle money, conflict, or disappointment. And those things matter a lot more than matching playlists." He shook his head. "You're making excuses." "No, I'm refusing to confuse trust with spending money." He folded his arms and leaned back. "My best friend's girlfriend bought him a promise ring after 2 weeks because she knew he was the one. And that worked for them. It doesn't mean everyone has to follow the same script." "She didn't spend months wondering whether he mattered. This has nothing to do with whether you matter." "Then prove it." The words settled over the table like a challenge. I looked back at the ring on his phone. "So let's say I buy it. Then what?" "Then I know you're not wasting my time." I frowned. "You honestly believe someone spending money on you proves they'll never leave?" "It proves they're invested." "No, it proves they can afford to swipe a credit card." His patience finally cracked. "I'm 27, Claire. I've already wasted years on women who claimed they were serious until things got difficult." "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said. "But your past doesn't give you the right to hand me the bill for it." He leaned forward again. "I need security. And I understand that. What I don't understand is why security suddenly costs $18,000. It isn't about the money. Then why is there a price tag?" For the first time, he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pushed the phone closer until the ring was almost touching my plate. "I need you to buy it before the end of the month." I met his eyes. "And if I don't?" His answer came without even a second of hesitation. "Then I'm leaving." The confidence in his voice told me he expected me to panic. He thought the threat itself would be enough to make me give in. Instead, I reached for my glass, took a slow sip of water, and set it back on the table. So let me make sure I've understood you correctly. Either I spend nearly $20,000 on an engagement ring after 31 days together, or our relationship ends. Exactly. I nodded. Then I choose the second option. For the first time all evening, he looked genuinely stunned. What? You gave me two choices. I'm choosing the one where I keep both my money and my self-respect. I didn't think you'd actually do that. That's the problem with ultimatums, I replied calmly. You don't get to decide how the other person responds. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I caught the waiter's attention. Could we have the check, please? Separate checks. The waiter glanced awkwardly between us before nodding and walking away. You can't seriously end this over one conversation, Ethan said. I'm not ending it over one conversation. I'm ending it because you believe love has to be purchased. I was testing you. No, I said quietly. You were trying to see how much control you'd have over me. My therapist says I push people away because I'm afraid they'll leave. I believe that, I replied. But there's a difference between understanding someone's wounds and letting them use those wounds to manipulate you. He lowered his eyes to the ring on his phone, but neither of us reached for it again. I hope you keep working through this, I said quietly. So you're really leaving? I signed the receipt, slipped on my coat, and stood. You gave me two options. I chose one. The confidence he'd carried all evening disappeared. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said with a small nod. But it'll be my mistake. I walked out before he could stop me. The cold night air hit my face the moment I stepped outside. I was disappointed because I had genuinely liked Ethan, and feelings don't disappear the instant someone lets you down. But beneath that disappointment was an unexpected sense of relief. It felt like stepping off a bridge just before it collapsed, realizing I'd trusted something that had never been as solid as I'd believed. Back home, I poured myself a glass of wine and tried to put the evening behind me. I honestly thought the relationship had ended at that restaurant. I was wrong. Before I finished my first glass, my phone lit up. Ethan, I'm sorry, I panicked. 5 minutes later, another message appeared. Please don't throw this away. I've never felt like this about anyone. I read both, locked my phone, and set it aside. There was nothing left to discuss. He had drawn the line and I'd simply accepted it. The messages kept coming. Can we please talk? I wasn't trying to pressure you. By midnight, there were nearly 20 unread texts. The next morning, the apologies turned into blame. You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret walking away from someone who wanted a future with you. A few hours later, the anger arrived. Forget it. Maybe you're just scared of commitment. By the following day, the tone had changed again. Please call me. I miss you. Then finally, you're exactly like every other woman. Watching him cycle from apology to anger, then guilt, hope, and insults was exhausting. The more messages he sent, the more certain I became that walking away had been the right decision. By the third day, I muted the conversation. On the fourth, I blocked his number, convinced that would finally end it. A week later, just after 8 in the evening, my doorbell rang while I was folding laundry. Through the peephole, I immediately recognized Margaret Carter, Ethan's mother. We'd met only once for a few minutes after one of our dates, and she'd seemed perfectly pleasant. This time, she looked furious. The moment I opened the door, she said, "We need to talk about what you did to my son." I stayed calm. "Good evening to you too. You humiliated him." "I don't believe I did." "You walked out and left him sitting alone in that restaurant." "I wasn't alone for very long. He hasn't eaten properly all week." "I'm sorry he's hurting." "Sorry isn't enough." I leaned against the doorframe. "What exactly do you expect from me?" "I want you to apologize." "For what?" "For breaking his heart." I looked at her for a moment before answering. "Your son demanded an $18,000 engagement ring after 31 days together." Her expression didn't change. "The ring wasn't the issue." "It certainly sounded like it was." "It was a test." I sighed. "That's exactly what Ethan said." "Because it's true." "No, it's manipulation." She shook her head. "You young women don't understand commitment anymore." I couldn't help staring at her. "I'm the one who refused to spend $18,000 after 1 month." "Exactly. If you truly loved Ethan, you would have fought for him." "I don't measure love by expensive jewelry." She stepped closer. "My son hasn't been himself for days," she said. "His last girlfriend wasted nearly 3 years of his life. I'm sorry that happened to him." "Then you should understand why he needed reassurance." "I understand reassurance," I said, meeting her eyes. "What I don't understand is turning love into an ultimatum." The more calmly I explained what had happened, the less convincing Ethan's version became. I never had to exaggerate because the truth was unbelievable enough on its own. A few days later, another text came through from an unknown number. "You blocked my other phone." Blocked. Another number appeared almost immediately. Please stop shutting me out. Blocked again. Then another. Emma is lying to you. By Friday afternoon, I'd blocked 4 different numbers. The wording changed every time, but the message never did. Sometimes he apologized, sometimes he blamed me, sometimes he insisted I'd misunderstood everything. No matter how he phrased it, every text asked for the same thing. Come back. I never replied. Late that night, another message slipped through before I could block it. Emma has always been jealous of me. She ruins every relationship I have. Whatever she told you isn't true. This time I didn't delete it. I took a screenshot. Without really thinking about it, I started saving every message instead of throwing them away. Maybe I'd never need them. But after everything that had happened, trusting my memory no longer felt like enough. The following Monday, Daniel called. I've got another update. I'm almost afraid to ask. Ethan reached out to Melissa. I frowned. Melissa had introduced us to online dating and had only met Ethan twice. What did he tell her? That you manipulated him. He also claims you spent weeks talking about marriage before suddenly panicking. I laughed in disbelief. We never talked about marriage. I figured. Daniel hesitated before adding, he's telling everyone the exact same story. After we hung up, one thought refused to leave me. The unsettling part wasn't that Ethan kept lying. It was how completely he seemed to believe the version he'd invented. 2 days later, Emma called. I just wanted to warn you, she said. Ethan and Mom have been calling relatives. They're telling everyone you led him on. Why? Because if people believe you left for no reason, nobody asks why you actually walked away. The answer was painfully simple. They're protecting the story, I said. They're protecting themselves, Emma replied quietly. Mom has always believed the first person to tell the story wins. Everything suddenly made sense. Margaret's visit, the rumors, even Ethan's constant messages weren't about fixing the relationship. They were about controlling the narrative. After we hung up, I opened every message Ethan had sent since the breakup. Side by side, they painted a strange picture. One apologized, another accused, another begged, and another threatened. It felt like reading conversations with completely different people. I organized every screenshot by date, saved them to my computer, and backed them up to the cloud. I still hoped I'd never need them, but I wasn't taking chances anymore. A few minutes later, another unknown number appeared. You'll realize someday that nobody will ever love you the way I did. I read it once, blocked the number, and went back to my evening. By the 3rd week, things finally seemed to settle down. The messages stopped, Margaret stayed away, and the rumors gradually lost momentum as more people learned what had actually happened. For the first time since that dinner, life almost felt normal. It didn't last. One Tuesday morning, I was preparing for a client presentation when LinkedIn notified me that Ethan had sent a message. Claire, I think we should discuss this professionally. You've been spreading false information that's damaging my reputation. This is defamation, and I'm considering legal action. I'd rather resolve it privately. I read it twice, took a screenshot, and immediately sent it to Rebecca. She called less than 3 minutes later. I shouldn't be laughing, she said, trying to hold it together. But he threatened to sue you. On LinkedIn? I wish I were making that up. You told people what actually happened, right? Exactly. Then don't respond, she said. People threaten lawsuits all the time. That doesn't mean they have one. Just keep every message and document any future contact. I've already been saving everything. Perfect. Keep doing that. After we hung up, I archived the LinkedIn message with the rest of my screenshots. 2 days later, I stopped by my favorite coffee shop after work. Ethan and I used to come there together, but I didn't think about that until I turned the corner and saw him waiting outside. The moment our eyes met, he stepped toward me. Claire. Hi. Can we talk? I don't think there's anything left to say. Just 1 minute. People drifted in and out of the cafe behind us while we stood on the sidewalk. I've been thinking, he said. I handled everything terribly. I came on too strong. I said nothing. My therapist's been helping me understand why. My fear of abandonment, my need for certainty, my attachment issues. They're explanations, not excuses. For the first time since we'd broken up, Ethan wasn't defensive. I looked tired. I shouldn't have asked for the ring, he said quietly. I kept telling myself that if you agreed, I'd finally stop worrying you'd leave. I'm glad you've started to understand that. A hopeful smile appeared almost immediately. So, does that mean we can try again? I shook my head. I truly hope therapy helps you, Ethan. I mean that, but I'm not coming back. The hope disappeared just as quickly. I admitted I was wrong. I apologized. What else am I supposed to do? I looked at him for a moment before answering. This stopped being about the ring a long time ago. He frowned. The ring was only the beginning. After I left, you let your mother confront me, told people I'd abandoned you, kept finding new ways to contact me, and even threatened legal action. None of that happened by accident. I looked down at the sidewalk. I just wanted another chance. You had one. His eyes lifted. When? At the restaurant. You could have realized how unreasonable your demand was. Instead, you defended it. Everything that happened afterward came from that decision. He rubbed the back of his neck. My therapist says healing takes time. I agree. I hope you keep going. He searched my face. So that's really it? Yes. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked, almost in a whisper, what if I never stop loving you? I sighed. Then I hope one day you understand that loving someone and trying to control them aren't the same thing. His eyes reddened. I panicked, he admitted. The ring was never really about marriage. I just thought that if I could make us feel permanent, you wouldn't leave. For the first time that afternoon, I believed every word he said. That was exactly why I knew I couldn't go back. I understand why you were afraid, I said. But fear explains your choices. It doesn't excuse them. He slowly nodded, and for a moment I thought we were finally going to leave things peacefully. Then his expression hardened. If you walk away now, don't expect me to wait forever. I almost smiled. Even after everything, he still couldn't let a conversation end without turning it into another ultimatum. I wasn't asking you to. You'll regret this. I don't think I will. You'll never find someone who cares about you the way I do. I met his eyes one last time. If caring about me means trying to control me, then I hope you're wrong. His jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. I walked past him into the cafe, ordered my coffee, and sat by the window until my hands finally stopped shaking. When I looked outside a few minutes later, Ethan was gone. I honestly believed that had been our last conversation. That night, my phone buzzed. Emma. Claire, you need to see this. 3 screenshots filled my screen. It was a private group chat between Ethan, Margaret, and a few close family friends. The messages were hard to read. Margaret wrote, "She never deserved you." Someone replied, "Any woman who fails a simple test isn't relationship material." Then Ethan added, "I really thought she loved me." Margaret answered almost immediately, "She'll come back. They always do once they realize what they lost." Beneath the screenshots, Emma had written only one sentence. "I'm sorry, Claire. I really thought he'd accepted the breakup." I locked my phone and sat there in silence. Those screenshots erased the last bit of guilt I'd been carrying. More importantly, they confirmed something I hadn't wanted to admit. None of this had been impulsive. The dinner, Margaret showing up at my apartment, the rumors, even the legal threats, and Ethan waiting outside the coffee shop were all part of the same pattern. A few days later, Emma called. "I wanted to tell you something," she said quietly. "My brother has done this before." That didn't surprise me nearly as much as it should have. There was another woman a couple of years ago. When she didn't move as fast as he wanted, he started testing her. He'd disappear for a day, threaten to end the relationship, make expensive demands, then call it proof of commitment. So the ring wasn't the first time. No, just the biggest version. And what happened? She left. Emma sighed. Mom blamed her for everything, just like she's blaming you now. She even went to the woman's workplace, cried in the lobby, and tried to convince everyone my brother had been treated unfairly. HR eventually had to step in. I leaned back against the couch. That's unbelievable. I wish it were. After we hung up, one thought kept circling in my head. I hadn't escaped because I was smarter than anyone else. I'd escaped because I walked away before the pattern had time to trap me. That afternoon, I blocked every remaining number connected to Ethan, blocked Margaret, made all my social media accounts private, removed every old photo I no longer wanted to keep, and even found a different coffee shop on my way home. Life finally settled into something that felt normal again. Work kept me busy, weekends filled with dinners with friends, and for nearly 2 weeks, there were no calls, surprise visits, or anonymous messages. I started believing everyone had finally moved on. Then Daniel texted, "Was busy tonight?" Before I could reply, he called. "I just got back from Melissa's birthday." "How was it?" It got interesting. Something in his voice made me sit down. "Ethan was there." "What?" "He came as someone's guest and started telling everyone you'd promised him forever before suddenly getting scared and leaving." "The same story?" "Worse." I sighed. "Did anyone believe him?" "For about 30 seconds. "What changed?" "Kevin." "My coworker?" "Yeah, he'd heard everything from you months ago, including the ring and the ultimatum." He waited until Ethan finished talking, then asked one question. Daniel laughed. "Didn't you ask Claire to buy you an $18,000 engagement ring after only 31 days? I smiled despite myself. The room went quiet. Ethan tried saying you'd twisted the story, but Kevin told everyone he'd seen the messages himself. "What happened then?" Melissa looked at Ethan and asked if it was true. He started talking about commitment and loyalty, but she cut him off. Daniel lowered his voice, imitating her. "That's not commitment. That's manipulation." No one defended Ethan after that. A few people asked how anyone could demand a ring after a month, while the rest simply looked disappointed. Ethan left before finishing his drink. After we hung up, I realized something. I hadn't defended myself. I hadn't shown anyone screenshots. The truth had finally reached people on its own. The next evening, Emma called. "I figured you'd hear about the party." "I already did." She let out a quiet laugh. "I think it's the first time anyone's ever challenged my brother publicly. Mom's convinced you'll come back eventually, and so is Ethan." I looked out the window. For weeks I'd wondered whether I'd been too harsh, but that doubt was finally gone. Walking away hadn't ended the manipulation. It had simply kept it from becoming the rest of my life. About a week later, Emma called again. "I've got 2 updates." "I'm listening." "My brother lost his job." She explained that his manager had given him routine feedback on a project. Instead of accepting it, Ethan demanded a promotion and a raise, then announced he'd quit if they weren't approved within 2 weeks. They accepted his resignation that day, Emma said. He thought they were bluffing. When he came back on Monday, HR already had his things packed. I closed my eyes. He really gave his boss an ultimatum. Almost the same one he gave you. Neither of us spoke for a moment. "I wish he'd learned something," she said at last. Instead, Mom keeps telling him his manager felt threatened. "So nothing's changed?" "No." Then her voice softened. "I've got one more piece of news. I'm moving next month." "Really?" "I need a fresh start. I'm tired of cleaning up everyone else's drama." "I'm happy for you." "So am I." Before hanging up, she thanked me for listening, and I thanked her for telling me the truth when no one else would. It was the last time we ever spoke. Over the next few weeks, mutual friends occasionally mentioned Ethan. He'd moved back in with his parents while looking for work, and Margaret still blamed everyone except him for what had happened. One afternoon, Daniel sent me a message. "Guess who's still convinced you'll call someday?" I smiled, locked my phone, and went back to my day. For the first time in months, it didn't matter anymore. A few weeks later, a friend introduced me to Ryan. Our first date lasted 2 hours. The second stretched past dinner, and by the fourth, I realized how different healthy relationships felt. There were no tests, no impossible demands, and no games disguised as love. One Saturday morning, we were sitting outside a neighborhood cafe when Ryan asked what had happened with my last relationship. I told him everything that mattered. We met on a dating app, dated for barely a month, and it all ended the night my boyfriend demanded an $18,000 engagement ring to prove I loved him. Ryan stared at me in disbelief. "He really expected you to buy him an engagement ring after 1 month? 31 days. And when you said no, his mother came after you?" I nodded. Ryan shook his head slowly. "I'm glad you walked away." "So am I." He smiled and stirred his coffee. "Honestly, that's insane." He looked back at me. "Nobody who really loves you asks you to buy your way into the relationship." It wasn't a dramatic speech, just a simple observation. Somehow, it was exactly what I needed to hear. Driving home, I realized Ethan had spent weeks trying to convince me that love could be measured with money. Looking back, $18,000 was never what I was saving. I was saving myself from years with the wrong person.